Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all, and welcome to the 2026 VinFuture InnovaConnect. Today's event brings together researchers, experts, and innovators to explore one of the most pressing challenges of our time: how cities can become more sustainable, resilient, and self-sufficient in the face of growing environmental pressure. So, our theme today is Towards Self-Sufficient Cities, Harnessing Urban Water Solutions for Agriculture. This event is organized by the VinFuture Foundation in collaboration with Van Lang University as part of the InnovaConnect series, a platform dedicated to fostering dialogue, scientific collaboration, and impactful innovation for humanity. My name is Sun Tui, and it is my pleasure to serve as your host and moderator for today's program. Thank you all for joining us, both here in person and online. For those joining us for the first time, a very special welcome. Let me introduce the driving force behind our event today, the VinFuture Foundation. The foundation was created in 2020 with a powerful mission to honor and inspire scientific breakthroughs that create meaningful, positive change in people's lives. At its heart are the prestigious VinFuture Prize, an annual global award celebrating the exceptional researchers and innovators behind discoveries that serve all humanity. For this special event, we are proud to co-organize with Van Lang University. Founded in 1995, Van Lang University has grown into one of Vietnam's leading private universities, recognized for its commitment to academic excellence, innovation, and sustainable development. Through strong partnership with academia, industry, government, and international organizations, the universities actively contribute to addressing societal and environmental challenges. Its sustainability efforts have earned international recognitions through the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings and QS Sustainability Rankings, placing Van Lang amongst Vietnam's top performing universities in environmental research. In 2025, the university was also honored with its first HR Asia Award, reflecting its dedication to fostering inspiring, inclusive, and people-centered workplace. Joining us today are our distinguished representatives and honored guests from both organizations. Representing our co-hosts from the Van Lang Universities, please welcome Associate Professor Dr. Trần Thị Mỹ Diệu, Member of University Council, Rector of Van Lang University. We are also honored to welcome Associate Professor Dr. Lê Thị Kim Oanh, Member of University Council, Head of Department of Research, Development, Dean Faculty of Environment from Van Lang University. And from the VinFuture Foundation, we are delighted to have Dr. Thái Hà Lê, Managing Director of the VinFuture Foundation. We are also honored to welcome Mr. Cảnh Toàn Quách, Directing Marketer and CSR of the VinFuture Foundation. Please welcome Ms. Hạnh Bùi, Head of Operations of the VinFuture Foundation. And lastly is Dr. Hải Lê, Executive Secretary of VinFuture Foundation. We also honor to welcome Mr. Trần Huy Hùng, Senior Economic Officer of Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Ho Chi Minh City. In addition, we are pleased to welcome representatives from Ho Chi Minh City Environmental Protection Department, from Forest Science Institute of South Vietnam, Institute for Circular Economy Development, Ho Chi Minh City Associations for Water and Environment, and representatives from NGOs, from Ho Chi Minh City Universities of Technology, Vietnam National University, Ho Chi Minh City, HUTEC, Cần Thơ Universities, from research centers, water supply companies, and other companies in the environmental and agricultural field in Ho Chi Minh City. Joining them are three speakers who will bring global perspectives and deep expertise to today's discussion. And we are especially honored to welcome Professor Adrian Mills, shareholder of the Environmental Technology Group at Wageningen University and Research from the Netherlands. And joining him from the Netherlands is Professor Simon Bush, Professor and Chair of Environmental Policies at Wageningen University Research. And lastly is Dr. Nguyễn Đăng Khoa, Head of the Master Program in Environmental Engineering, as well as in natural resource and environmental management at Van Lang University. Together, our speakers will bring extensive expertise in environmental governance, water technology, circular urban systems, wastewater treatment, and sustainable resource management. Please join me in giving our distinguished guests and speakers a very warm applause. To officially begin today's program, it is my honor to invite Associate Professor Dr. Trần Thị Mỹ Diệu, member of the University Council, Rector of Van Lang University, to deliver the opening remarks. Please join me in welcoming Associate Professor Diệu to the stage.
Thank you. Good morning. Distinguished Dr. Thái Hà Lê, Managing Director, VinFuture Foundation. Distinguished Professor Arian Mel, Chair of Environmental Technology Group, and Professor Simon Bush, Chair of Environmental Policy Group, Wageningen University and Research in the Netherlands. Distinguished Mr. Trần Huy Hùng, Senior Trade Advisor, the Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Ho Chi Minh City. Distinguished guests, speaker, honored lecturer, colleagues, and students. Good morning, everyone, again. So, on behalf of Van Lang University, it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you here today for special event, the VinFuture InnovaConnect workshop with the topic toward self-sufficiency, harnessing urban water solution for agriculture. And we are truly honored to collaborate with the VinFuture Foundation in hosting this meaningful event with the valued participation of our distinguished expert professor from Wageningen University of Research in the Netherlands. We are all know in recent years, the world has been facing increasingly complex challenges related to rapid urbanization, climate change, water scarcity, environmental pollution, and sustainable food production. And these challenges require not only technological innovation, but also strong interdisciplinary collaboration among university, among researchers, among industry, policymaker, and community. So the event today reflects that spirit of collaboration. That's why we are very grateful for VinFuture Foundation for creating the InnovaConnect initiative. I think that it now has become a platform connecting the Vietnamese researcher, like researcher from Van Lang University today, with the leading international scientists and fostering impactful global partnership that is so important for Vietnam today. And for Van Lang University, for me, that is very special and very important milestone from this event today, as it marks 30-year collaboration between Faculty of Environment of Van Lang University with Wageningen University and Research. That is long partnership, long relationship, long collaboration with everything we done for the environmental protection, the sustainable development of Vietnam and the region throughout all the projects, throughout all the education, throughout all the capacity building that we have done so far. I'm very happy and also appreciate for the participation of professor from Wageningen University, not only for today, but also for the long journey we have been working together. And today, discussion about urban water management, about wastewater reuse, about nature-based solution, about circular resource use, about sustainable agriculture. For me, I think that is highly relevant, not only for Vietnam, but also for many, many rapid urbanizing regions around the world. So if we found the solution, it's not only for Vietnam, it's also for the region and also for the world. So how important of this workshop. And I hope that throughout the valuable presentation and discussion, we all can together explore the innovate, the practical solution that really can contribute to building resilient, sustainable, and self-sufficient city in the future. I look forward to that solution, and I look forward to see it really happen. For my research, I work in eco-industrial park, eco-town, eco-city, and for the whole my life of research, I try to apply in Vietnam to see that the green industrial zone in Vietnam and to see the eco-town is happening in Vietnam. So I look forward to this solution from this research. That's why I really appreciate the participation of representatives from government agency, from industry, from NGO, from local community, from research institution. Because your expertise, your experience, it can bridging the gap between the research, scientific research and the real world implementation. And in particular, today is very, very special because the event also carry the special meaning as it's organized in celebration of World Environment Day. Today, 5th of June, and the theme of this year is inspired by nature for climate and for our future. And I think this topic is really aligned with the theme of today, but also aligned with our whole life in the future. So I think that together we can do something, even in theory for our students who sitting here, who not only study in environmental field, but also studying in all the field, it all relating to sustainable development. So for that, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to VinFuture Foundation for such very meaningful program, and for all the partner, all the distinguished speaker, all participants for joining us today. I wish you all productive and inspiring event. And may your time at Van Lang University for all who are here today with us, and your time with the event today with all who are participate online be filled with knowledge, with friendship, and unforgettable moment. And I hope to see you all here at Van Lang University again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Associate Professor Dr. Diệu, for your warm welcome. Now, following those thoughtful words from our co-host, we would like to invite Dr. Thai Ha Lê, Managing Director of the VinFuture Foundation, to deliver the welcome speech on behalf of the foundation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Thai Ha to the stage.
Associate Professor Trần Thị Mỹ Diệu, Rector, Van Lang University, Professor Adrian Mills, Professor Simon Bush, and Dr. Nguyễn Đăng Khoa, distinguished guests, college students, and friends, good morning. It is my great pleasure, on behalf of the VinFuture Foundation, to join you today at Van Lang University for this edition of VinFuture InnovaConnect. First of all, I'd like to express our sincere appreciation to Van Lang University for co-hosting this meaningful event, and to our distinguished speaker from Wageningen University and Research and Van Lang University for sharing their time, knowledge, and expertise with us today. Today is June 5th, the World Environmental Day. It is therefore especially meaningful that we gather on this occasion to discuss an urgent and practical question for sustainable development: how cities can better manage, reuse, and regenerate water resources, not only to reduce pollution, but also to support greener agriculture, healthier communities, and more resilient urban system. At the VinFuture Foundations, we believe that science and technologies are most powerful when they help address real challenges faced by people, communities, and societies. This belief is at the heart of VinFuture missions to honor and promote science and innovations that serve humanity. InnovaConnect were created with that spirit. Through this platform, VinFutures aim to connect leading international scientists with Vietnamese researchers, institutions, students, and stakeholders so that frontier knowledge can be shared, adapted, and further developed in response to Vietnam's practical need. The topics of today's event reflect this mission very clearly. Vietnam, like many other countries in the region, is facing growing pressure from urbanizations, climate change, water pollution, and rising demand for safe and sustainable food systems. These challenges require not only advanced technologies, but also interdisciplinary collaborations across environmental engineering, urban planning, agriculture, policy, governance, and community engagement. Today's discussion invites us to look at urban wastewater not simply as a waste stream to be treated and discharged, but also as a potential resource. Can treated water and recovered nutrients contribute to greener agriculture? Can nature-based solutions and constructed wetlands help cities become more circular and climate resilient? And how can scientific ideas be translated into solutions that are technically sound, economically feasible, socially trusted, and practically implementable? We are very honored to welcome three speakers whose expertise complement each other. Professor Adrian Mells brings deep expertise in advanced wastewater treatment, water reuse, and integrated water system with valuable lessons from the Netherlands. Professor Simon Bush brings an important perspective on the social, policy, and governance dimensions of the environmental innovations, especially in relation to commercialization and wider adoptions. And Dr. Nguyễn Đăng Khoa will bring the discussion closer to the Vietnamese context, particularly through the nature-based solutions, constructed wetlands, and emerging treatment technologies. Today's event is also meaningful because it contributes to a longer journey of collaboration between Van Lang universities and Wageningen University and Research. The expected signing of the MOU later today is an important step toward deeper cooperations in training, research, technology transfer, and future joint projects with the real impact. For the student and young researcher in the audience, I hope today's event will also be an inspiration. Many important scientific journeys begin with a question, conversation, or just a new connection. Through the platforms like InnovaConnect, we hope more Vietnamese researchers and students will have the opportunities to engage with global knowledge, contribute local insights, and participate in solving the environmental challenges of our time. Once again, I'd like to thank Van Lang University, Wageningen University and Research, our distinguished speaker, and all participants for being here today. I wish the event great success, and I look forward to an engaging and fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tai Ha, for your inspiring remarks. Please take your seats as we continue the next part of our program. And now, before we begin our discussion, let's take a quick moment to watch a short trailer that gives us a glimpse of today's topic and the inspiring speaker who will share the insights.
Across Vietnam and around the world, societies are increasingly confronting critical challenges related to water scarcity, environmental degradation, food security, and climate change. With rapid urbanization placing greater pressure on existing water resources, there is an urgent need for sustainable and circular solutions that can support both urban living and agricultural development in the long term. In this context, the VinFuture Foundation, in collaboration with Van Lang University, will host the InnovaConnect event titled Towards Self-Sufficient Cities, Harnessing Urban Water Solutions for Agriculture, on the occasion of World Environment Day. Joining us is Professor Adrian Mells, chairholder of the Environmental Technology Group at Wageningen University and Research, the Netherlands. His work focuses on water technology and urban circularity, including industrial wastewater treatment, nature-based solutions, and innovations in water systems. Beyond academia, Professor Mels has held leadership roles in water sector development and infrastructure investment, including serving as Deputy CEO of VEI and CEO of the Urban Water Catalyst Initiative. He is also recognized for coordinating major international initiatives such as WaterWorX, supporting water resilience and sustainable water production across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Accompanying him from the Netherlands is Professor Simon R. Bush, Chair of Environmental Policy at Wageningen University and Research. His work focuses on environmental governance, aquatic food systems, industrial water management, and renewable energy, with long-standing collaboration across Southeast Asia and beyond. Professor Bush is widely recognized for his contributions to sustainability governance and aquatic food systems, with more than 200 publications, and is a lead author of the Blue Food Assessment led by Stanford University and Stockholm University. From Vietnam, we are honored to welcome Dr. Nguyen Dang Koa, head of the Master's Program in Environmental Engineering, as well as in Natural Resources and Environmental Management at Van Lang University. He received his PhD from Nagaoka University of Technology, Japan, and has over 10 years of research experience in environmental technology and sustainable materials development. His work focuses on waste valorization and the development of low-cost functional materials, from agricultural and industrial waste for environmental applications. He has also participated in projects on industrial waste treatment and reuse in Ho Chi Minh City, contributing to circular economy and sustainable waste management initiatives in Vietnam. Join us at the VinFuture InnovaConnect towards self-sufficient cities harnessing urban water solutions for agriculture.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Professor Adrian Mills, shareholder of the Environmental Technology Group at Wageningen University and Research. Professor Mills is internationally recognized for his work in water technology, urban circularity, wastewater treatment, and nature-based environmental solutions. His research and professional leadership have contributed significantly to the development of innovative urban water systems and sustainable infrastructure initiatives across multiple regions worldwide. Today, he will discuss about the nature-based solutions, practice, and research. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Mills to the stage.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to stand here in this very nice invitation that we received from the Van Lang University and the VinFuture Foundation, and I would like to extend also our gratitude and for this nice invitation on the occasion of World Environment Day, and also for an opportunity to also continue our collaboration with Van Lang University. So it was already mentioned there is a long-standing collaboration already between Van Lang University and Wageningen University, which I believe goes 30 years back. And over the years, there's been a lot of exchange in terms of research ideas, collaboration, joint students and PhDs, and I believe that with that, we have also contributed to capacity development on both sides. And I see this is also a great opportunity to continue that collaboration. So I would like to again extend my thanks to the rector and the dean and all the colleagues of the Faculty of Environment and the wider Van Lang University, in addition, of course, the VinFuture Foundation for their leadership in bringing scientists together. My name is Adrian Mels. As was mentioned, I'm a professor in water technology and urban circularity, and I would like to start this opening lecture with an overview of nature-based solutions that we have in the Netherlands and research that's ongoing at our department at Wageningen University. Let me first give a short overview of the intended outcomes of my lecture. I would like to introduce you into nature-based solutions, as they are increasingly recognized as vital approaches for achieving global sustainability goals, particularly in the context of climate adaptation and resilience. And this not only goes for the Netherlands, but I think there is a worldwide recognition that nature-based approaches could bring a lot in addition to traditional, more grey infrastructure engineering approaches. And we see that those approaches are also taking up more and have multiple benefits altogether. In my presentation, I will introduce some examples, some potential benefits, and I will also introduce some of the ongoing work in the research group that I'm leading. But let me first give you a small introduction on our university, Wageningen University. We're a university focusing on exploring the potential of nature to improve quality of life. So working on nature-based approaches, climate resilience is very close to what we do. We have a large staff because the university is not only an educational institution but also hosts a non-profit research foundation which provides advisory services to both the government as well as to international institutions and Dutch both government, decentralized government and private sector. And we also have about 13,000 students from over 100 countries. It's a very international university. It has a strong focus on agriculture and environmental sciences, and we have a track record, especially in the agricultural fields, in which we are considered as one of the top universities. But also in environmental sciences, we do a good job, we think. My department, in our department, we specifically focus on technologies which are aimed to design circular and resilient resource systems for a clean environment, where we also would like to use and help minimizing resources use and pollution. And we very much believe in circularity as an important step towards long-term sustainability. And in our group we have three focuses. First of all, we are very much focused on resource biorecovery, which basically seeks to take out valuable materials from waste streams. So, for example, nutrients from wastewaters. We also look at sulfur recovery. We look at selenium recovery. Basically, we look at all kind of rare materials. Well, we would like to see how through what nowadays is called urban mining, to see how we can get to more circular systems. The second research theme is very much aimed at clean circular water. This is why we work on water technologies and on wastewater technology development, and more this is not only aimed at reduction of emissions to the environment, but also to see how can we approach and go forward to a more circular water cycle. And then finally, the third theme that we address in our research is focused on urban systems, on urban infrastructure, on system approaches where we balance out and try to calculate on resources, and very much on green infrastructure and green infrastructure development for cities. And in the latter theme we work a lot with, for example, the Amsterdam Metropolitan Institute and with other groups related to spatial planning and governance. Well, to start my the content of my presentation, I would like to first introduce the Netherlands geography to you, because we have a geography which has some similarities with the geography of Vietnam. We're a low-lying delta with multiple rivers coming into the country, and that means actually that a large part of the Netherlands is below sea level. And you can see that here on the map. The purple-colored areas are below or at the same level as the sea, and that brings out challenges in terms of flood protection, but also in terms of water supply. So over the hundreds of years that the Netherlands is existing, our ancestors and ourselves, we always have had to think about how do we keep the water outside of the country, and at the same time, how do we manage fresh water resources? Because especially in the west, where the bigger cities are, and where most of the population of the Netherlands live, the groundwater levels, or the groundwater is largely brackish, so it's very difficult to abstract sweet water. While in the east of the country, which you see in green here, there's a lot of groundwater, freshwater reserves that we can use for drinking water, agriculture, and industry. So this whole issue of flood protection and water supply, and in addition also wastewater treatment has really triggered a long engineering tradition when it comes to that. But you can see a bit of an increasing trend to see whether that's, say, traditional grey infrastructure engineering could also be more combined with green approaches. So we see in that our government has also developed a policy in that to make that more explicit, and to say that water and soil should have much more of a guiding approach or a guiding principle in making spatial choices in the Netherlands. And that is partially, that relates to, for example, flood protection, but also creates creativity, but also important choices on where do we build our houses. Do we still build in the lower lying lands, or are we choosing other locations? And one of the critical things here is also that there should be enough space actually to make sure that rainwater is also somehow there is sufficient place in the country to also store that for in order to make sure there are not too many flood events. So this whole idea of water, soil, geography as guiding spatial choice is an important element of both policy making, but also in the spatial planning. It also brings out all kind of nature-based solution approaches that for a part were already there for long times, but are now kind of reappreciated, but also reinvented. And I made a list of some examples which are applied on a rather large scale. So what we see is that there is more and more approaches for nature-based solutions for flood protection. So in the coastal area, there's a lot of dunes that are being managed in a way that not only natural processes, but also human-enhanced natural processes are making those flood protection areas of the flood defense infrastructure more strong. Another good example, and I will show some examples, another example here later in the slides, is managed aquifer recharge for drinking water storage in coastal dunes. We also have a practice on nature-based approaches for wastewater treatment, which very much relates to the topic of today. And there is an increasing attention for urban blue-green infrastructure to enhance water infiltration, to look at urban heat mitigation, and to green cities. So let me show you an example of managed aquifer recharge in the coastal dunes. This is quite a standing practice for decades now. This is where groundwater in the dunes is supplemented by natural infiltration for drinking water storage. Basically what is happening here is that fresh water from surface water that is transported is infiltrated in these dune coastal aquifers, and the idea is that this provides a storage, a reserve of water for 3-4 months for the coastal cities. And basically what happens here is that this sweet water, it's located on top of brackish water and saline water. It doesn't mix, and it's a very important freshwater resource, both for calamities, but also it also receives a certain degree of natural treatment. This is an example of the city of Amsterdam, the capital of the Netherlands. And what you can see is that this system doesn't stand on its own, but it's quite an engineered infrastructure system. So this is where, say, grey and green engineering comes together. The green pipes are large pipelines of 55 kilometers indicatively, and they bring water from one of the rivers to the Amsterdam area. And in the Amsterdam area, a big part of that water is then again infiltrated in the coastal zone, which you see on the left, the yellow area, and that water is then stored for some months, and after that it's abstracted and it's treated. And this system serves about 2/3 of the needs of the city of Amsterdam. The other third is done through conventional approaches. This is done actually in many places in the coastal area, and it's also one of the means to provide resilience, to make sure that there is sufficient water also when there is a drought or when there is a calamity, for example, a toxic spill in one of the rivers. This is the dune water infiltration area in the dunes, and what is nice about it is that it's not only an infiltration area, but it's also a recreational area and a nature reserve. So it has multiple functions, and I think that is one of the key advantages of these natural approaches, is that you can make use of the several functions of nature to bring added value. So this area is very important for the Amsterdam area, for recreation, for biodiversity purposes, and then in addition, of course, for the water supply. Now, this approach, you can also find similar approaches in the treatment of wastewater. So several systems have been developed with natural principles for treating wastewater, and they're also applied in several places in the Netherlands. For example, we have constructed wetlands for wastewater treatment in rural, remote areas where there is not too much sewer. And in that case, we combine these systems with a first sedimentation step in order to take out sediment and suspended solids. And then after that, there is a treatment which combines different principles like filtration, plant uptake, absorption, biodegradation, and at the end there is water that can be discharged to the local surface water, or might also be reused for irrigation. We find it also on a much larger scale, where this is not meant in what they call the waterharmonica approach, and this approach is basically a treatment after an existing wastewater treatment for the purpose of improving water quality so that the water becomes fit for discharge into surface water at a much higher quality, which fits then the requirements of the ecological requirements of the European Framework Directive, which aims to actually bring our surface water quality back to ecological water quality. And these systems are also more and more applied by different water authorities to enhance surface water quality all around the country. And then a third example, which is more and more applied, are these blue-green infrastructure approaches in which stormwater is infiltrated in soils. So there's a trend to reduce the hardened surface, to take out asphalt and stones, and to have much more natural infiltration areas in cities in order to take out excess of rainwater, but also to provide additional water resources inside cities so that there is more greening, there is more biodiversity in cities. And this is a increasing trend, especially now the climate change also leads to rising temperatures in cities, and urban heat is becoming more and more of an issue that is being addressed in urban planning. So what can we learn from these practical examples? Well, I think first of all we can see that most of these approaches have a multiple benefit approach. So they serve a purpose, but they also have an additional effect in nature development, in recreation, in beautification, in creating more biodiversity. So this is, I think, a big added value, as I mentioned earlier. And in addition, I think what is very good about it is also that we kind of move much more with nature. So that also brings a certain degree of resilience to these systems, which I think we need for the fact that due to climate change we can predict much more uncertainty when it comes to rainfall or droughts, and especially the function, for example, of water storage creation is very important in that respect. Now, a few slides on what we are at Wageningen University do on this topic in the engineering department. This is the photo of a test location that we have behind our building, in which we do conduct research on how do plants remove certain micropollutants. Basically, the research lines that we have at this moment is that we are developing models for nature-based solutions for storing water in the underground, and especially look at the effects of the way the upper ground, so the layer of ground is behaving. We look at vegetation on land changes in order to enhance actually water infiltration in the underground. Second important theme is the retention and the degradation of persistent organic micropollutants. Third theme, very important, is the planning of multifunctional blue-green infrastructure in cities. And then finally, I will show you an example also about industrial effluent reuse in agriculture for the southwest of the Netherlands. So let me take you through this very quickly. Basically what you see here is an infiltration facility where water is infiltrated in the underground, quite similar to how it's done in the coastal dunes. But what we are doing here is visible also in the right upper picture, where we show model results of calculations of a combined surface groundwater model, where we are looking at recharge of the aquifer, and this is a specific case for Kenya, where there is a strong need for that because of depleting groundwater levels. And what we basically want to show is that, and understand, is how much of the water that is there falling during the year, how much can we really store for the dry season. Second theme, very important, is the micropollutants. So what we experience, and there is much more international attention for that nowadays, is that in wastewater treatment we take out organic material, nutrients, but there is often also all kind of trace pollutants remaining, which stem from pharmaceuticals. And we also see an increasing occurrence of pesticides and PFAS in natural water. And one of the challenges is how to deal with that, because if they're not removed, they accumulate in our natural systems. So our research is here focusing on what kind of information do we need to model the removal of these micropollutants. And we specifically look at the persistency, which we express with the degradation time, or the half time, and the mobility. And by combining these data for different compounds, we can model and predict what these compounds do in natural systems and what we can expect. And with that information, on the one side, it's possible to design modified versions of conventional wastewater treatment systems, potentially with additional steps. But we will also want to use this knowledge to improve the design of nature-based constructed wetlands, so as to enhance actually that removal. At the same time, we realize that full removal is challenging. So recently, some of our colleagues also have developed a white paper addressing industry to have them make them much more aware of the fact that all kind of chemicals that are being developed, if they are not tested for their biodegradability or their persistence, and their persistence, at the end of the day, we will end up with these chemicals in the natural environment. And I think up to now, environmental engineers or environmental scientists have difficulties of seeing how we should tackle that then in the future. So such accumulation, at least, is something we should really stop. So third of 4 examples of the research we do, this is a project that we do with the city of Amsterdam. It's called, it's a software called Rain Oasis. And basically what we are doing here is combining a GIS and a calculation model to help the municipality plan for blue-green infrastructure in their city. And then also to help them to understand the effects of more blue-green infrastructure in cities. So basically, what you see on the left side is the effects or the investments that you could possibly make in these blue-green investments, and then see what kind of effects that can have on water retention or on cooling. So there's a very strong interaction between more blue-green infrastructure in cities on cooling, but of course that takes investments and takes investments for the future. And through these projection models, it's easier and helpful for the municipality to make decisions for the shorter and the longer term. And then finally, one example that I would like to show you, and that is very much related to the topic of today on water reuse. We're working with some industrial stakeholders in the province of Zeeland, one of the water-prone areas. You can see there's a lot of water, but this is mainly salty water, and that area that you see there in the middle, where the case study is really has big issues with having sweet water there. So we're doing a case study with one industry and farmers on how can we possibly close the loop there. There's an agri-food company that uses drinking water for vegetables processing. They treat wastewater and they discharge it into the local water body, which is salt. So there is potentially 600,000 cubic meters of sweet water available for agriculture. And well, there is a dire need, especially in seasons when there is a lot of dryness. So different stakeholders here are collaborating to see how can we organize a potential use of effluent for irrigation, for farmer irrigation. Now, there's a lot of interest, willingness, and one of the challenges that we are now supporting this project with is how to organize the distribution. But because wastewater, of course, is produced on one place, it's not always the same place as where the farmers need it. So we are looking for ways on seeing how to convey that water to the right place, for example, by existing surface waterways or by a piped distribution network. Now that wraps up my presentation. I would like to end here with the statement that there is a lot of practical and foundational knowledge in the Netherlands and at our university on nature-based solutions for urban water circularity and self-sufficiency. And in the collaboration that we have and that we foresee, I think there is a lot of opportunity to support Vietnam in practical case studies for green urban developments, and that would be a very nice topic, I think, for future collaboration between our universities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mills, for those valuable insights. And now, our next speaker is Professor Simon Bush from Wageningen University and Research. Professor Bush is a leading scholar in environmental policies and sustainability governance, with extensive international experience across Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe. His research focuses on the interactions between environmental governance, aquatic food systems, industrial water management, and sustainable resource policies. Today, Professor Bush will share his perspectives on the governing service regimes for upscaling urban water reuse for agriculture. Please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Bush to the stage.
Thank you very much for that very warm welcome, and I'd also like to pass on my thanks to VinFuture and to Van Lang University for inviting us here today, and especially on this World Environment Day. World Environment Day that celebrates the world environment, but also, as we've heard, 30 years of collaboration between Wageningen and Van Lang, and hopefully many more years of collaboration. I was also very happy to hear the focus that we heard both from Major, the rector of Van Lang University, and also Tai Ha from VinFuture on the importance of interdisciplinary approaches towards this problem. Because these problems of water reuse are very complex problems, and yes, the technology is central to resolving those problems, but also society is very important for resolving those problems, and the governance steering society to use technologies in ways that can in fact resolve many of these big challenges. So that's what I'm going to talk to you today about. I'm really going to focus on the social dimension of water reuse, and specifically looking at the governance of what I'm going to call service regimes. And we're going to learn about what service regimes are a little bit later on in my presentation. So what we also heard already today, to quite some extent is some of the challenges. Where we like to focus on challenges in science. We also focus on solutions, of course, but to get those challenges right. So what are those challenges? Well, climate variability. I think we've heard the word climate a number of times already today. That's a global issue which has very local consequences, and we'll get to what happens in Vietnam in a minute, but we feel them here as well, of course. Rising urban demand. There's more people living in cities, and that means that the demand for water in urban areas is rising. In fact, what we expect to see in the coming decades is a 50 to 70% increase in demand for water in urban areas. And that's often in urban areas that are already running close to a deficit. So this is an enormous challenge, and also underlines why reuse is such an important focus for the work that we're talking about today. Of course, it's not just urban areas, it's also rural areas which are facing these water shortages. And again, being in Vietnam, we don't have to remind everyone about the challenges that a very complex environment like the Mekong Delta is facing, with saline intrusion, falling water levels within the Mekong system. These are going to create pressures moving to the future as well. And on top of that, we also have often ageing infrastructures which need renewal. And I think Professor Mels has given us some great examples of how the Netherlands has tried to address this ageing infrastructure in the past, but also is planning really for 50, 100 years into the future to make sure that we have resilient infrastructures, resilient technologies. So these are some of the key challenges that every country, I would argue, around the world is facing in some way. In Vietnam, I think there's no difference. Increasing climate variability, rapid urbanization. I haven't been to Ho Chi Minh City for 6 years, and coming back in this last week shows me that things move on very rapidly in Vietnam and very rapidly in Ho Chi Minh City. Industrialization also increasing. But I think to the point I want to make today is all that so that there are challenges when it comes to policy fragmentation. I've put this under Vietnam, but I think this is a challenge that, again, many, many countries around the world face, and it's something I'm going to focus on today. So fragmented policy between different sectors, the water sector, the agriculture sector, urban planning. These are considered as separate sectors often in policy, but when it comes to a challenge like water reuse, actually they're the same, right? So if we had fragmented policy landscapes, that can slow down the process of planning, slow down the process of innovation. And of course, I think it's also important to say that institutional capacity, so the capacity of governments, of private sector to innovate, often receives not enough attention. And that's also something I think that needs greater attention. And just to illustrate where these challenges might lie in Vietnam, I mean, in 2022, we saw the need for delivering water, tanking water into urban areas of Hanoi in order to cope with water shortages. And even in the last months, we've seen rural areas, peri-urban rural areas around Ho Chi Minh City suffering water deficits. So these are very contemporary issues. So painting that very complex picture of challenges, it's also, I think, important to note that today I want to try and introduce you to a more systemic way of dealing with these. So we talked about interdisciplinarity, the need for technical but also social sciences. How do we combine those technical and social sciences into a systemic, a systems way of thinking of dealing with all of these challenges? So not breaking water into a sector, agriculture into a sector, urban environments, urban management into a sector, but seeing them as part of one system. This is very much what we like to do at a place like Wageningen University, and I know Van Lang also does this because of the connections we've had over the years, so it's really central. So the claim I'm making is that we need to rethink water systems in terms of thinking about the kinds of transitions we need to make in order to break down institutional barriers and rethink the design of these technologies. It just doesn't happen. We need to organize that transition. And there's many, many ways in which we've tried to do this around the world. So we can think about urban-rural. That's a very classic divider, the urban and the rural. But we realize that there's very, very strong connections when it comes to water, when it comes to food, when it comes to energy, very close connections. So we should break down this barrier often. Don't call it rural and urban, just refer to the system that we're talking about in terms of the service delivery or the resources or the environmental impacts. The same with water food. There's obviously a very obvious connection between water and food, and we shouldn't think of food governance and water governance. We should think of food system, water systems being the same systems instead of breaking these down. The same water, energy, food. We often talk about the WEF nexus, the water, energy, food nexus, how these things connect. And that's for a reason, because it's again trying to get governments, private sector, society, not to think about the energy system, the water system, the food system, but again, one system which is interconnected. And of course, I think Professor Mills gave some great examples of many of these, but also in particular the nature-water connection is a very important one, and we can also think of nature-water food. I think you're understanding my point, to think of this more systemically. And in order to do that, yes, we do need to rethink circular reuse systems, and this is really the point, as a social technical system, a socio-technical system that needs to be governed. So, now we have another challenge. This is a very common, I think, kind of figure that we see when we ask engineers to construct what a water system looks like, right? We have the abstraction of water there on the right. We have the storage of water, the delivery to households through pipe systems, so the supply of water. But then, of course, there's wastewater. And we've heard already again today, we all know what wastewater is, I think, but starting from industry also, but industry and also urban households. And what happens to that water after? It goes to pumping stations, it goes to wastewater treatment systems, and then it might end up in estuaries, it might be sludge, for instance, might be transported into agricultural systems. But these are really systems which are designed to extract water, water passes through the system, and then water returns back into nature, into surface water, into receiving waters. So this is a I would say, semi-end of pipe model for water management. Now that's been a very successful system for many, many years. It's delivered a lot of people around the world water. But in the context of demand for reuse, then this system is coming under strain in many parts of the world. And that's essentially at the core of what we're talking about today. So we need different ways of changing this picture into more circular systems. And there are a lot of different examples. I won't repeat what Professor Mills has already told us, but I think we can think of we like to do that as scientists, right? We like to classify different systems. We can think of different strategies towards circularity, and those different strategies occur at different scales, at different urban and rural scales. So we can think about retrofitting existing infrastructure. So Professor Mills also gave us some examples of putting perhaps wetland systems, heliophyte systems, reed beds into existing infrastructure, into existing wastewater systems. That can be an option. We can think about realigning with urban canals, in this example, of course, from Ho Chi Minh City, where we visited last week. So how can we use wetland areas, or let's say redirecting canals, urban canals, to try and improve water quality within existing urban settings? Could be another way. So realigning existing infrastructure to come partially to the way towards circularity or reuse. We could also think about integrating, and there's various notions of sponge cities, of trying to integrate green roofs, urban greening, many, many different ways that we try to integrate environment, but also water reuse into the design of our cities. And the last is a whole range of different decentralized technologies. Now, those decentralized technologies can be standalone intensive wastewater units that can even be moved around the city, something also that Wageningen has been working on. Or we can have decentralized technologies of wastewater systems in industrial zones, in some urban areas, and together those decentralized systems may, if connected, contribute to an overall improvement of water quality. Now, there's a lot more detail here. All I want you to get from this slide really is that there are these different strategies, and that we have a choice as to what kinds of strategies we want to put in place. We can govern, we can steer technology and its use towards the different options like this. Now, it's also, I think, important that, this sounds like a very ideal picture. We just move a linear system into a circular system. There's various strategies, and we can just go ahead and do that. But there are also recognized constraints, common constraints or barriers So we can call them social technical barriers to realizing this transition from linear through to circular systems. I also already indicated this notion of policy fragmentation. So this notion of where you do have a whole policy regime, perhaps even a ministry. We can think about ministries of agriculture, ministries of water or water infrastructure, ministries perhaps of energy, ministry of nature, environment. These ministries are often very large organizations within government that don't always talk to each other very effectively and may have different goals and ambitions which are complementary to each other but aren't often implemented in a very complementary way. Now again, that's a problem in many, many different countries around the world. I think a good example of that is in the water reuse is when we try to have distinctions between wastewater and surface water, for instance. We were talking to our colleagues the last week, Professor Mells and myself, and there was an implication or there was a thought that perhaps the Netherlands has got this right. There's a very clear way that reuse has been governed in the Netherlands. Well, there's still very clear limitations to this within the Netherlands as well. The European Union, indeed, through the Water Framework Directive, wants to make sure that the water that's being released into surface waters is of ecological quality, but that's in surface waters. And releasing wastewater into surface water is a necessary step. You can't just simply reuse wastewater without it going into surface waters. So there's all sorts of, even though some of that wastewater may be of a higher quality of the water that's going into the surface water. So there's all of these institutional challenges, which is just a matter of labeling and classifying different kinds of water quality, for instance, that remains a barrier to really the pure idea of reuse. And we see, I think we had some examples also from Professor Mells from Zeeland, a province in the Netherlands. He was talking about industrial water and the challenge of reusing industrial water. This is another example very close to where he was talking about with urban runoff, so household wastewater, a wastewater treatment plant, where they're also now, only really now, instead of releasing water from this into the Oosterschelde, which is in the background there, a river, coastal area, trying to reuse that in agriculture. There's, again, all sorts of food safety issues with that. There's also an acceptance, a social acceptance. Can we use wastewater on our agricultural lands? Will people accept that, both in terms of the farmers, but also in terms of the consumers? And indeed, there's also that question, can we just simply take water legally from this and put it onto agricultural land to reuse? Well, there has to be some adjustment to the policy before that's allowed. So there's a lot in that policy fragmentation box. There's also indeed the challenge of legacy infrastructures. I think I've already talked a little bit about that, but we have very fixed ideas around what urban or what water infrastructures are, and it can take a long time before we can come with ideas like nature-based solutions and how can we transfer those in. Even though, and I've heard this in the last week of being in Ho Chi Minh City, that some water treatment managers may see really the value of integrating new nature-based solutions into their wastewater systems, but they don't want to take the risk of doing that, because if they fail to do that, then you're left with an infrastructure that may not work, or that doesn't reach the ambitions of what the government wants. So there's a lot of risk-taking that's needed to transfer these systems from legacy systems into new systems. Again, a problem everywhere in the world. There's also, in that same breath, established roles of actors. We have water regulators. We have wastewater treatment facilities. These are very recognizable kinds of actors. But what we, I think, need is to think about how water utility companies may play different roles. They don't think of themselves as being agricultural water suppliers necessarily. They don't think of themselves as being nutrient extractors for fertilizer, for instance. They don't think of themselves as that because that's not their mandated role. We have to rethink what those mandated roles could be. And to the point, I really want to spend the rest of the presentation on routinized water practices. We often think about consumers as well, we think about water consumers as consuming water, but if we think about the way consumers think about water, they don't think about the litres. Think about yourselves. Do you think about the number of litres that you've used in a day? How many litres of water, or what the quality of the water is entering or exiting your house? Maybe you think of that, but you certainly think every single day about using water, even though you're not thinking about it. You wash, you go to the toilet, you cook, you do all of these things, and that involves water and that affects water. So we can't just think of water as a separate thing, it's also integrated within our everyday lives. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit more today, but also how that feeds back onto the whole policy picture as well. So to help us think about that complex picture, what we like to do in science and social science especially, I think, is to simplify things quite a bit. So today I want to talk about a model, what we call a mixed modernity model or approach to water reuse transitions. And there are 3 dimensions that I think need to be addressed, but also changed and also linked together in order to have a better understanding of systemic change towards water reuse. The first is policy regimes, and I've spent some time talking about this, right? So coherence between, for instance, policy related to agriculture, for wetlands, for urban water. I think you get the point there. The second, and that comes back to the title of my presentation today, refers to service regimes. Now, service regimes are combinations of the infrastructures, right? The infrastructures, the rules that are being set out, but also the kinds of actors that come together to deliver a service, right? So if you're a water company, if you're a wastewater company, then you have your infrastructure, a wastewater plant. You have certain standards delivered by the government that you have to meet. And there's also perhaps a government owner, there's a private owner, and there's also the consumers that you're delivering water to. So all of those come together in what we call a service regime. And lastly, there's everyday practices. So that's the meanings, the rules, the competences, and the materials that we need and bring together in order to perform farming, in order to perform cooking, health, cleaning, leisure, and also sanitation. All of those things are the things we do every day. We don't think how they might affect water, but of course, they're affecting the way that we use and affect the quality of water. Now, everyday water practices. If we revisit this picture that I had, this very linear picture of water systems, I think it's very important at the middle to realize that households and consumers are at the center of that system. It's why these systems are being put in place, right? Water systems are not there for the sake of the water systems. They're there to deliver water to consumers and to treat the water that come from those consumers. And what is, again, is it the people? Well, yes, it's the people, but it's what people are doing to the water, how they're using that water that affects its quality. When they're farming, again, when they're cooking. We talked about a little bit with Professor Mills, issues around health, for instance, right? We see in water that there are a lot of pharmaceuticals which are in the water. That comes from people in their households, either releasing those from their bodies, or what we see, the modern day toilet has become a very, very efficient means of getting rid of things from a household. So all sorts of things are put down the toilet, and that's become a practice to simply wash things away. But that has a consequence, of course, for what comes into the water. It affects water quality. So these are some examples. And all of these things are not done separately. Often they're done in an everyday basis, multiple times, and they constitute the practices of those households, and they're at the very center of how a water system is performed. I'm going to skip over this slide. So then we have water service regimes. I've already mentioned, they are made up of infrastructures, institutions, and actors. So if we talk about water reuse in the context of, we can talk about it in many ways. There are service regimes for many of these terms I've put there, irrigation, pesticides, etc. But we talk about sewage treatment. Yes, we have infrastructures for the sewage treatment. We have regulations, standards for water quality. And indeed, we have companies, we have the state, and we also have consumers, whether they be consumers of water within a household context or whether they be receiving, or we want them to receive water that has been reused. So these are the actors, infrastructures, and institutions that come together. We can also think about fertilizer having a service regime, right? Fertilizer comes from factories. It also has standards, and it also has companies, the state, and farmers which are making up that service regime. Now, the point I don't think that would surprise anyone, this slide, but I think, again, to this point of integration and a systemic understanding of how water could be a connector between these things, we have to move beyond just simply thinking of these as separate service regimes, because there are many connections. if we want to extract nutrients from water in the water treatment process and we want to deliver that to farmers, then immediately thinking of sewerage as one service regime and fertilizer as another service regime doesn't work anymore. These are going to be connected service regimes. So we need to redesign what a service regime for delivering, for instance, nutrients to fertilizers to farmers from wastewater would be. Now, just to emphasize that the connection between also service regimes and everyday water practices, service regimes often, and I think I've mentioned this already, but they relate to target but also non-target practices. So fertilizer targets farmers who want to put fertilizer on their farm. That's a simple way of saying it, right? And we might be able to think of that in other ways. So service regimes want to target waste from sanitation. Okay, I think we understand that. But also, as I said before, it's related to healthcare. Even though they may not want to be related to healthcare, the sort of pharmaceuticals which end up in our system, that's part of what a sewage treatment is also trying to address, as well as just, let's say, cooking or other sources of wastewater from an everyday household practice. Now, this is perhaps how a service regime may see what happens in a household, and they may have plans for that. But we can also think of it the other way around. If you're performing cooking, then you would be interested in fertilizer use, drinking water, food safety, sewerage, and all of a sudden the service regime isn't, I don't think the service, or let me say it differently, the pesticide service regime, the drinking water service regime, the food safety, all of these things are all targeting the same practice, but they may be doing that in very, very different ways. And perhaps we should start seeing from the practice of cooking, how can we integrate a service regime which addresses in an integrated way the concerns and risks that we have when it comes to delivering safe drinking water and food. And the same can be done for sanitation, the same can be done for farming, the same can be done for leisure even. So these creates a very complex picture of trying to work out how these service regimes are related to and align with practices or not, and redesigning these service regimes to better deliver these services, to enable people to perform these practices in an everyday way. Now, this might sound all very complicated, but it all comes back to what I was saying before. We have systems in place which are not designed for these integrated understanding of water, and especially water reuse. So we need to change the way that we organise these regimes, and that requires changes to everyday practices, as well as changes to the policies that are put in place. And just to emphasise that, we can move from practices to thinking about how these practices might be linked, how connections between these service regimes can be redesigned, and then I think on top of that, how can policy steer these shifts and transitions? So this would again be another challenge, moving from practices to service regimes to policy. Policy also, agriculture may not think they've got anything to do with sewage treatment. They may not think they've got much to do even with drinking water, but they do cover many of the other points. And vice versa, wastewater may think, well, I just do sewage. What have I got to do with food safety? If it's about water reuse, then it's definitely going to be about food safety, for instance. So to tease you with an idea, what we do see in many countries are debates around moving from very broken up ministries within government, for example, to holistic management through holistic ministry structures. Now, it doesn't happen very often in practice, although there are some examples, but would there be a possibility? What would it look like even, a ministry of water reuse? Another thing we talk a lot about in the Netherlands is moving a ministry of agriculture in the same way to a ministry of food, because food relates to far more than what agriculture ministries are actually interested in. And that can translate into different kind of subsidies, different kind of integrative policies, regulation across these service regimes which recognises the interconnected nature of how water is actually used in practice. Okay, that's a lot of social science. What I want to do is give you some example, one example in particular, an imperfect example, but an example of how there have been attempts in the Netherlands to come with an alternative model for integrating all of these service regimes and practices into a different way of dealing with water, and in particular water reuse. So Lanxmeer is a town, a development, let's say, in a town of Culemborg in the Netherlands, where they've implemented a decentralized sanitation and reuse system. Now, in very practical terms, and for time I'll keep it short, but this involved, for instance, putting in place a wetland, a reed heliophyte beds that would be able to perform anaerobic treatment of concentrated wastewater from the surrounding houses. It also involved the reuse of treated wastewater irrigation and fertilization, so using liquid fertilizer within a green area, all the green areas within this development, but also in a city farm. So they've actually integrated agriculture within this urban area, this urban development. There's also drinking water extraction from wetlands. There's also biogas energy generation. And all of this is servicing 200 homes in this development. Now you can imagine this wasn't a whole bunch of houses which then all of a sudden decided to do this. This was really a redesigning and a holistic design of an urban area, reimagining of an urban area with principles of reuse, servicing multiple practices. This was the goal from the start. And I think an important element of this is that it changed the view of a water consumer, what a water consumer is. It didn't see people living there as consumers of water, it saw them as co-owners and co-designers, co-governors of that water system. They had direct input into how they felt they would be using the water, how they would respond or integrate reuse into their daily lives. And the engineers and the design of the system was built around those practices. So the service regimes looked very different than what they do in a normal, let's say, housing development. And yeah, many things were changed. There were technologies extended into houses that delivered water in different ways. As I said, there was co-designing of these water systems with hygiene practices in mind, in toilets and in kitchens. There were new waste disposal practices put in place. But because they had the city farm, there was also shared food provisioning practices, meaning people had to take an active role in the food provisioning, the production and provisioning of food. Now, this may not be for everyone, that's why I'm saying it's a very idealized case, but it gives an example of how this can be thought of and it could be adapted to different situations. Now, the service regime, instead of having, let's say, water companies coming in and saying, you will have a water system that looks like this, there was co-management, co-design, as I've said, of these systems. And that required, ultimately, policy to make certain exceptions. They talk about exception zoning. So for this area, they thought we need to experiment. We're going to give an exception so you can experiment. So government played a really important role in enabling this creative co-design process to happen. And they also delegated authority and responsibility to a community resident association to deal with the ongoing management of it. So there's different ways to think about this which are more integrative, is the point. So if this was to be upscaled, these sort of systems, and there have been attempts to upscale them, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a starting point to think about this, then there are key questions, I think, that come out of this. So how do we co-design water reuse? I think there are 4 key questions. The first is, how can policy reshape service regimes to support new water reuse practices? That's a fundamental question that needs to be answered. What incentives are needed for technology owners to link service regimes? So not just be an agriculture service regime or a wastewater regime, but to link these things. Is there an incentive? What would that incentive be? What changes are needed to water service regimes to change with water practices? Because they are also constantly changing. And to what extent do new technologies reinforce or enable changes in everyday water use practices? Because consumers will also have to change how they are addressing or dealing with water and water reuse if this is going to succeed. Now, I think there's a hopeful note at the end of this. We have these small examples, but we can imagine, and this is an imagination, an AI-generated imagination, of how we could redesign urban areas that would bring in fundamentally recreation, that would bring in fundamentally agriculture in different ways to urban areas. So again, I'm not saying this is the future, but if we have a desired future like this, then we have to start thinking from a socio-technically integrated way. Now, this all looks very perfect at a smaller scale, but of course, ultimately, we would want to scale this up to cities. And how that would happen, I have no answer for you today, but I think it's a fundamental question that science, interdisciplinary science around water reuse and places like Van Lang and marketing, or I might add, should start to address. Have been addressing for many years, but I think there's a need to really extend that work into the future. And with that, I'd like to thank my colleagues, Bas van Vliet and Judith van Leeuwen, and thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bush, for your insightful presentation. And now, it is an honor to welcome Dr. Nguyễn Đăng Khoa, Head of the Master Program in Environmental Engineering, as well as in Natural Resource and Environmental Management at Van Lang University. Dr. Khoa specialized in environmental technologies, waste valorizations, and the development of functional materials for wastewater treatment and pollution control. His research focused on the transforming agriculture and industrial waste into valuable environmental materials, contributing to more sustainable and circular approaches to resource management in Vietnam. Today, he will deliver a presentation titled Towards Self-Sufficient Cities, Harnessing Urban Water Solutions for Agriculture. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nguyễn Đăng Khoa to the stage.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all of the esteemed guests here and via Zoom. So first of all, I would like to apologize for any differences between being here and being on that photo, but 100 is about me, yeah, guarantee one. Then, okay, so today on behalf of your team, so I would like to introduce to all of you about our pre-proposal of the project. So it's called Towards Self-Sufficient City, Harnessing Urban Water Solution for Agriculture. And of course, we would like to get to your full attention and also constructive feedback for further improvement. For the table of content today, so it's going to include 4 parts. The first one, introduction. The second, conceptualization. Third, factor evaluation. And finally, 4, processing phase. So let's take it into part 1, introduction. So here we would like to present to all of you about the detail, of course, our team member. And the main topic today is about domestic wastewater treatment in urban city and several issues around. And from that one, our team would like to propose this multi-discipline-based innovative solution. And of course, this one is going to be used for the substance suitability for the community, especially in urban areas as well. So first one for our team. So we would like to introduce to all of you about our team member. The first one, yeah, our team leader, Dr. Trần Thu Trang. Yeah, she's a PhD in environmental policy. Dr. Lê Minh Trường, PhD in environmental science. So both of them graduated from Wageningen University in research. And of course, me, I'm going to represent to our team today. So Nguyễn Đăng Khoa, I got PhD in science of technology innovation, especially focused on material science. And we are from Faculty of Environment, and of course, very honored to represent Van Lang in this event. And of course, for our team, we have very strong support from our long-term partnership over 30 years from Wageningen University in research, that's Professor Mel and Professor Simon. And thank you for your 2 previous interesting lectures. And just a bit reminder from that we are from Van Lang University, so we have more than 4,000 partners around the world, ranging from university and institutes. So no matter what it is, you got our back. And of course, for the main topic of today is about the domestic wastewater treatment in urban city and issues. So as we know, with the higher urban population right now, it can increase the volume of the domestic wastewater right now. So that makes it a top priority right now we need to concern. And thanks to the development of the science and technology, as well as the very strict demand of the social right now, so nature-based solutions should be firstly addressed. And thanks to Professor Mel, so he already introduced you about a constructed wetland. So this is a model and so very the strong candidate to remove all of the pollutant in the domestic wastewater, and not just only that, constructed wetland also create a very beautiful landscape. So somehow the technology will be regulate the connection between human and nature. But the thing is, like in the term of wastewater treatment, so just simplify that one for those who's not in the field. So it just consider about the initial concentration of the influent and also for the regulate the outsider, especially for the effluent. So when it need the requirement of a discharge standard, so it's called as appropriate treatment. But also the thing is like with the lower concentration of the contaminant in the effluent is also cause something, especially when discharged into the outsider for the ecosystem. So this one can cause some several things, especially the bioaccumulation. And of course we are maybe at the final step of the food chain, so it's going to be affected not only the loss of diversity, but also for human health as the anticipating consequence. So for our team, so we would like to think a little bit different because the composition of the domestic wastewater influent, so it's contain various different things, right? But the thing we would like to focus on is the nutrient elements such as nitrogen and phosphorus. And then with appropriate treatment, so we get the suitable concentration of this element in the effluent. And so what we're gonna do next. So regarding to that nutrient solution, so we might think to the application for agriculture. So how? Yeah, especially that we live in the context of urban area right now and with the limitation of the land use, so more that we live in a like small apartment or a condo. And then we are right now facing some outside challenges, especially for the food quality. Then someone like would like to provide themselves with some daily basic veggie. So with a small limitation of spaces, balcony, so we can create some little garden, but regarding using up soil or chemical fertilizer, so we can have the hydroponic system with some dilute veggie, and so nutrient solution can be a good selection here. So how to create that one, and of course our team would not to create something very innovation, because our team do agree like innovation has been existing for a long time in our society, but we have not discovered yet. But maybe sometime innovation can separately and in single system. So for our team, so we would like to take like something innovation but already existing for a long time and try to combine them together and try to create something new. So it's kind of constant innovation as well. And our team would like to fully understand the difference between the single and also the combination, what's going to be similar or not, so we're going to find out. And to do this, of course, like we think that just only one discipline cannot control and or contribute to the whole system. So here our team would like to present to you our proposal about the wheel gear effect. So we both know that the wheel gear is the main component for the machine, and then when one turn, so it's going to be the rotational movement and try to transfer all of the power in between the component. And if the starting point work highly perfect, for the whole system going to work very smoothly. So this thing we would like to use in our project somehow. Okay, here so we propose to 3 different wheel gear as seen on the screen right here. The first one, environment. The second, material science, try to support all of the system for environment. And another one is the final one, the nutrient solution for agriculture. So for the starting point, it should be from the environment, because this is a domestic wastewater treatment, right? So it's going to be a starting point come from the environment. So when this one works, so it can create a rotational movement to all of the other. And of course, we want to make sure that the starting point should be corrected for the whole system going to work precisely. And then all of them can affect to each other, and we try to create our theme. So this is the big one for our topic. We try to create a circularity in urban resources. So this is what we would like to focus on our project. And of course, this one going to be used in urban. And so urban is considering a lot of communities. And for a long time, we do know like the academic knowledge should be travel, not just along very specific communities, right? The first one is in this situation is going to be the waste management. But right now, our team also think like we try to break down the barrier between all other communities in the society. And why? Because in this one, we would like to obtain the nutrient solution, and who's going to use it? Who is the end user? So that what the potential consumer in this situation is going to be the largest community in the society, like the normal people who is not in the field and who maybe do not have any knowledge about that one. So they also use because they need to know the benefit of it. And of course, when they're using this one, so we would like to enhance the awareness about the waste-based resources, and not just only good for their generation, but also for next generation. But right now, the thing is, like we do not have the very specific regulation or guidance like how to use the recycling product here in Vietnam. So we would love to have the participation of the working in the policy, and with the informants of all of them, yeah, we try to create something. And from the smaller thing like this one, from management and other normal people in the community, and especially for those in the policy section, so we can create something big. And of course, we would hope this project would be a silver lining to break down all of the barrier between all of the community in the society. And we do believe that together we can create something special. So, for that one, so we would like to present to you our main objective in our project here. So the first one, we try to obtain all of the suitable parameters for domestic wastewater treatment, especially here, we focus on the constricted wetland. And then we would like to support this system with the photocatalyst system here, but the thing is, like, photocatalyst needs to be modified a little bit to work along with the constructed wetland. And final one, because it's going to be separated in single system, so the suitable parameters for each one needs to be adjusted when combined together. So that's why we have the third one is processing operation, try to get the suitable parameter for the whole system. And we would like to compare between the combination one and the single system as well. And of course, in this one, just not only about the technical, but we would like to focus on the social. So here, the policy and social evaluation, we would like to use some framework measurement for the community willingness. Because right now, we do not know how the community can interact with the nutrient solution. So we would like to use that one to evaluate the whole thing. So over on the project, we'll give you guys all of the things from very beginning, all of the technical term, and try to get the final result, and try to get like why the society react to our real product. Then, so we would like to show you very more closely to the conceptualization in part 2. So the first one, yeah, as indicated in Professor Mel's presentation. So we have this one is the illustration of the constituent wetland. And of course, here we have several things, layer by layer, all of the substances, and of course, it's very different processes in here, try to remove all of the pollutant here. And once again, like the first one is the concentration of all the contaminant in the influence, and with the appropriate treatment here, so we will get the result. But the thing is, like, in the context of urban, how to operate and also maintain this one, and of course, we both know constructed wetland require huge or a nominal land use. So in urban area, that's one is quite limited, right? So we need to modify it a bit and try to integrate something to support the whole system. So here we would like to add the photocatalyst system here. So basically, photocatalyst, like, we can use it to support like before or after constructed wetland. It's really depend on our purposes. But here I would like to introduce a little bit about the photocatalyst here. So normally, photocatalysts can work under the UV or solar irradiation, but basically it's work well under the UV. But in the solar spectrum, so you can see that just 5 or 10% is going to be the UV. So for the rest of them, it's a visible light. Then how to use this one? And also, because we're going to work this one along with the constructed wetland, and constructed wetland going to be operate under the sunshine. So more of them is a visible light. So we need to modify that one, try to adopt the whole thing to the constructed wetland as well. Then, of course, like, we have not figured out which is the best or optimal in the modification. But the thing is, we try to work this one under the visible light, try to align with the operation system with the constructed wetland. And we hope this one gonna support and try to prolong the working duration of the constructed wetland as well. Then after that, we would like to give you the proposed scheme as mentioned before here. Because for all of them, the first one we need to evaluate in the single system. And of course, we do not, it's gonna work well or not, yet to be honest. And so that's why we need to evaluate. And when it is a single system or is it a combination system, so we need to consider, because It's really depend on the precision of this one. The photocatalysis motor is going to be first or after the constructed wetland, so the whole system can interrupt it or some kind like that. But finally, like, we need to get the nutrient solution, and of course the nutrient solution gonna get the community analysis. So this is for our very simple proposed scheme. So the new thing in our project also, like, we consider about the social aspect. So here, our team member would like to present to you guys the social practice theory, SPT, and social network analysis. So normally, when doing this theoretical framework analysis, most of the researchers gonna do it separately. But in our team, so she would like to create something different, try to combine the whole thing together and to know that within the common in between, and try to know all of the common factor between the two models and try to create something different compared to what has been done before. And from that theory framework analysis, here, so we would like to have like the successful commercialization and spread out with the adoption of the nutrient solution. So for the next one, like, we need to consider all of the factor evaluation in each section. So this one, it wrap up the whole parameters we would like to focus on in our project. And of course, we do understand that it might not be in total, but like just selection. And of course, we would love to hear your feedback about that one for maybe improve. Then for the first one is about a constructed wetland. The constructed wetland and also the photocatalytic modification system. So we need to choose several criteria. So especially all of the parameters for constructed wetland has been written down here. And of course, we would like to put the photocatalyst. We need to choose what is the type and the size of the photocatalyst, and also the cost is very important, because here the thing is not looking for the very optimal treatment, 90 or 100%, but we try to find the suitable the concentration. So that means the suitable parameters should be focused, not the optimal one. So we need to consider more about that one. Then after this one, for a single system, so we try to combine them. So it's called a POS, processing operating system. So another parameter should be considered, try to find which one is the more impact and try to connect them together. After get the nutrient solution, so we need to do the quality assurance, try to make it compared to all of the commercial byproduct or not. And also, we need to use to get the efficiency in plant development, especially the one we would like to target for hydroponic system. For the social, so the community's willingness, so we need to clarify the material, meaning the competency, and finally map time, density, distance, and centrality. So we are going to the final part of the processing phase here. So the first one, we would like to divide out the project into 3 different parts. The first one, the work package 1, is like the suitable parameter for the single system, for the constructed wetland, and also for the photocatalytic modification. Work package 2 is trying to combine them and to understand the differences between the single and so the combination one as well. And the final 3 is about the social technical assessment for commercializing of the nutrient process. So we divide it into this one. Then, how we operate that one. So where we're gonna do that one? So because we're from VU, right? So yeah, VU is a very complex university and we have many different majors, and also the number of the student and also the researcher, all of this have been increasing year by year. So that's why, yeah, domestic wastewater and also increase. That's why, like, how about just simply implementing it here? As a magazine, is a very special case, and we here and then we try to contribute something to our facility, right? So the first one we choose is Wageningen University. And why? Because here you can see a lot of different things, just only about technical, but then social. For example, like after you get the nutrient solution, how about the design? Let's try to get the attention, try the attraction from all of the user, right? And try to, compete to all of the existing one. So that's why here we have this one. So we have Faculty of Art and Design. So yeah, so we can connect to each other. And so why not? Because like we do understand that right now, academic knowledge is about transferring, not just only in our field, but for whole the other who would like to understand. And then especially here, we have the very strong support, just not only for researcher, also for student. And then the interaction is very important and try to build up the capacity just within our university. So that brings up what? The internal core force is from our university, so we're independent compared to each other. So that we would like to refer here. And for the potential outcome, so it's really dependent on work practice, so we really have the outcome and also the target for each one. So the first work practice 1 and work practice 2 is basically the difference in single or binary system. So the outcome, of course, the suitable parameters and the design. Because not just only about working, but also when you get the similar wastewater solution with similar composition, appropriate concentration of the contaminant inside, so we can transfer all of the design parameters to them. And of course, we would like to do more is the nutrient solution. So this one is the 2 target. And especially for the social analysis, it's going to be a little bit more. The outcome is going to be the affecting parameters to the community willingness, what they interact with the nutrient solution, and also who they're going to interact and what they're going to need. And of course, here's the key actor for the operation, and the target here is, of course, the policy marker. Second one, the potential consumer, and the final one, the big one, all of the communities in the society. So this is for all the content of our present today. And yeah, thank you once more for taking your time to participate here. And we would love to hear your opinion in the Q&A section. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hua, for your sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now move to the Q&A sessions, the most interactive part of today's program. For our online audience, please feel free to submit your questions through the chat box, and we will direct them to the appropriate speaker. And for those joining us in person, please raise your hand and our team will bring a microphone to you. And to begin our discussion, may I kindly invite all our speakers back to the stage. Please welcome Professor Adrian Mills, Professor Simon Bush, and Dr. Nguyễn Đăng Khoa. May I kindly ask our organized team to bring the microphones to our students so they can share the questions directly with the speakers. I see some hands raising over there.
So I have a question. Framework combines nature-based process with advanced engineered elements such as nanomaterial and photocade. How do you decide where the boundaries lie between the nature-based solution and engineered treatment system?
I'm sorry, which speakers would you like to direct this question to?
Mr. Simon.
Mr. Simon, I believe the floor is yours. Thank you for your questions.
So the question is, how do you decide, on what basis do you decide whether you implement a nature-based solution approach versus a more conventional gray approach, I would say?
Yeah, I think,
yeah, very good question. I was actually thinking while I was listening also to my colleagues that say engineering practices have a certain tradition. I think having a preference for a grey infrastructure. And actually, we're in a learning stage on how to do that. So how can we integrate nature-based approaches and make, say, the optimal blends, I would say, of grey and green infrastructure. I think there are not yet fully developed criteria. For some domains, we have a lot of experience, like we know about water infiltration. There are certain design characteristics that we can design a system for. There's a lot of experimentation, but I think as a collective in the sector, we're learning together, and through the work that we are doing in the research and the modeling that we're currently doing in our group is that we also would like to bring all these experiences together and try to also develop decision support models. And I think your question is valid, because also if you want to go for innovation, if you want to go for large-scale application of these approaches, we're in a time of very rapid urbanization. There is a high need of different approaches. So I think the question comes also, how do we scale all these innovations into engineering practices? And in that respect, I think you address a very good point, that this is something important, and also and I would say now for a part this is already there, and for a part we are working on it. We have to work on it as a community.
Thank you so much. So can I have another questions for the speakers, please?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the presentation. That was quite amazing. So I have a little question for Dr. Hua. Yeah, so let me introduce myself a little bit. We are from Agno Group, an agrochemical manufacturing company, and we are very interested in your project. And when you talk about commercialization, my question is, how do you define the business model? The final products, do you see it as a fertilizer, or do you consider yourself as a service company?
Okay, yeah, thank you for your question. So from my humble opinion, and of course all the knowledge I gained right here, so in our terms, it should not call liquid fertilizer. It's just kindly like the nutrient solution, because we're targeting very selectively on just only nutrient and food fats. So we do think like with kind of consider fertilizer, it have a lot of different things inside, and maybe it have the regulation or any, how to say, standard for what kind of fertilizer right now. But the thing is like in our project, the scope is would like recycling, and of course would like to enhance the awareness of the waste-based resources. And of course, it's going to be used for the whole people in the communities right now. So maybe for fertilizer, I think right now we have not. But the thing is like we start first with nutrient solution. And of course, it's really depend on the demand of the society. Of course, we both know that we are very strictly, right? So we get higher. It's really depend. And of course, a very cheap one as well. Then it's really depend at each previous given time. So we need to develop some kind of it. Yeah, so this one is very the first stage. So we hope, yeah, that's one got to work. Yeah, is it okay?
Oh yeah, thank you. Can I please ask you another questions regarding to the technical stuff? Okay. So from my understanding, the urban wastewater, like the content of it, can vary significantly based on so many variables. Mm-hmm. So how can we make sure that that we can have the consistency in terms of quality and nutrients?
Okay, so that one that we would like not to expose here, but okay.
Sorry.
Okay, but okay, thank you for your asking. Also, this one, so we need to strictly control all of the quality of the influent, and of course we do know, like, because it's really dependent for we get the domestic wastewater, right? It's going to be day by day or month by month, so the quality is going to be different, and especially where we're going to get centralized or cluster bay. Yeah, isn't so, right? So it really depends where the source is, and we try to focus on that one. And of course, we do agree with you like, with the variable. Yeah, during time, and especially in Ho Chi Minh City, it's only 2 seasons, right? And working with the contrast as well, and so we try to avoid all of the dry season and so the rainy season as well. So all of things should be considered, and this is what we would like to more clarify in our final proposal. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. No more question from me.
Thank you very much for the presentation. My question I would like to direct to Professor Simon. Okay, may I introduce myself a little bit? My name is Huang. I'm also a PhD. You know, I finished my PhD in Wageningen University from the Water Resources Management Chair Group. So it's my honor to be here today and listen to your, presentation. Very, very informative and interesting. I'm interested in the case of Landmeer in Culemborg, the Netherlands. So we are talking about Vietnam is now really targeting in promoting like circular economy and also water resources recovery. But in the market, the products derived from wastewater is still remain limited. So from your experience, like international experience and expertise, can you tell us, is there any kind of like policy instrument or governance mechanisms that can help to accelerate this kind of commercialization of the products like waste derived from wastewater, especially in Vietnam? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. You guys are coming with really big questions, which is fantastic. And I think it also indicates, just the level of development. We're really thinking for the future here as well. So I think, which governance or which governance approach would then accelerate that process? I don't think there's any single governance approach, but I think what is important to recognize is that it's in the case of Vietnam, for example, that whatever sort of master planning, there's many ways to answer this, but I think if we're thinking about sort of long-term change, we need to take a long-term perspective to start with. So what I was getting into in my presentation is not just simply a matter of providing an incentive which will then be a silver bullet for creating change within the system. I think the first thing is we need to think long-term, and part of, I think, also the answer to the last question is how do you ensure quality and quantity, for example. That requires really new thinking of how we create buffering within the entire system. And that's not just going to be government providing those services, it's going to be private sector as well. So that long-term perspective of what kind of infrastructures, what sort of long-term infrastructures are needed, I think are important. And I think Professor Mels's presentation indicates, the Netherlands didn't come up with all of these different approaches in the last 5 years, right? They did this over, 100 years longer overall. So there's a very long trajectory towards that. You link to this notion of Landmeer, so this example. So if I take that as an example of the change process towards new policy, or let's say the way in which consumers engage with their water and water reuse, I think that's also an important element of this. It's not going to be for every consumer to live in such a community. So it is important, I think, that as a society we understand where people's risk tolerance is for these different kinds of new water systems. And within that, there's partly, and I think this was addressed by Kwa as well, so there is an educational element to this, but there's also a means of trying to change the sort of values upon which people are willing to engage in new ways of living. So it's really sort of more fundamental changes to how water is integrated within everyday life, and how are we really going to use wastewater. And again, there's no silver bullet governance arrangement for that. That's partly going to be informational, educational, but it's also, I think, when we get to the infrastructure level in the shorter term, then we've really got to start thinking about, as that example also illustrated, how the existing governance regimes can create exceptions for the process of innovation. So how can we create exceptions over a particular time frame where the rules can be, let's say, changed or perhaps forgiven if there's any issues, let's say like that, in order for innovation to really progress. Otherwise, I don't think we're going to come with the sort of level of innovation that's needed. So I think there's something that needs to happen at the consumer level in terms of understanding. There's needing to be sort of a space for innovation to actually occur. And also from the private sector, that's also, I think, a really important thing, is that
They also have to be able to see, of course, the business model. I think this goes to the previous question. Is there a business model? Is there ultimately going to be profit in operating like this? And that, I think, in the short term, that's not always immediately clear that there will be a clear business model for this. So again, going back to my first point on long-term planning, there has to be a change process to, perhaps different ways in which companies are perhaps providing a service to a community like Langsmere, or perhaps it's a matter of a company like yourself from the previous question getting into a completely different sector. And that's, again, we might take 10, 15, 20 years to really realise. But if you don't start now, you're not going to get to that in the future. So in terms of governance, again, yeah, that could come from indeed policy. It could come from some level incentive. But it also requires investment and a long-term vision from the private sector as well. I'm sure Professor Mills would add to that, but that would be my perspective.
Thank you so much, Professor Bush.
Yeah, maybe adding to that, what I see in the different programs that we have is that I think the idea of urban circularity, water circularity in the Netherlands had not been that important because we had a lot of water, and I think the case study on the industrial effluent reuse kind of illustrates that when water starts to be more of a commodity that is scarce, there is an automatic incentive for stakeholders to also to start thinking about it and to see to think together to see how they can overcome these policy and regulatory barriers that are sometimes there. And it's not in the practice you see that overcoming these barriers is challenging, but I think once there is this increasing demand for resources like water, but maybe also phosphate in the future because of their scarcity, I think there will be a rising societal awareness and push to start creating new interactions between different regimes and stakeholders. And I think that is, I think what will happen more in the near future because of the increasing scarcity of certain components. Yeah.
Thank you so much. May I have another question, please, from the audience? Can you bring the microphone to over there?
Thank you for all of your sharing today. And I'm very honored to be here. And let me introduce myself a bit. My name is Daniel, first year student majoring in public relations. And I have a question for you, Professor Simon Bush. It's a bit related to my major. Public perception is often a major barrier to the acceptance of recycled products. And based on your experience, what strategies can university, businesses, and government can use to increase public trust of and acceptance of products from recover from I totally forgot. Recover. Also, I want to hear your experience, especially in the context of Vietnam or developing countries like Vietnam.
Yeah. So I understand the question. There's a few questions there, but I think one is, and it's a good question, so how can we increase trust in reused products? Is that part of it? I think that was part of the question. So what role can government play there? And I also think you were referring to how we can affect people's risk perception around those reused products. So both really fundamental questions. I think the trust and legitimacy question, I think, really comes if we're talking about government, but also we can talk about third-party private organisations as well, which I think is important. They play an important role, I think, in legitimacy by, for instance, just the things we do now, right? Increasing or setting standards, for instance, right? So whether consumers trust, whether it be government standards or third-party standards, that's not always the case, perhaps, but there's little more I think governments can really do than really setting and demonstrating that there is compliance to those standards. And then we get into a whole world of sort of the governance of compliance, right? So whether that be first party certified or whether there's a third party that comes in and assesses standards, I think there's many ways and a lot of experience from the water sector as well as other sectors to show that those systems can in fact be very effective. I'd also like to pick up on the point when you talk about risk perception. So it really goes, I think, to the point I was trying to make in the presentation, that we often think of consumers as being very rational, right? That we want to see consumers simply knowing what the quality of their water is, of looking up information, of making clear, rational decisions. And yes, we do make rational decisions in our lives, but we often don't make very rational decisions in our lives. And so the point I'm trying to make with this notion of a practice, an understanding of social practice, shared practices, is often that we do things in a certain way without really thinking about the consequences of it. So does that mean that consumers play no role? No. What that means is that the infrastructure and the service regimes can already play a bigger role in really steering people to using reuse water when people really aren't really aware of themselves using that reused water, for instance. I mean, if you think about the notion of, we wash our hands after we've eaten or before we eat, for example, right? That's a learnt behaviour, and that's something that people do unquestioningly today, right? But that also required education, but it also, I think, can be affected in terms of the ways in which we also construct and understand hygiene within our lives, right? So then people are aware of that, they enroll themselves in certain practices, and then they may unthinkingly simply be able to incorporate reused water, for instance, in their daily lives. So that gives a bit more of a theoretical answer to it, but I think there's a distinction to make between rational behaviour and really trying to steer people to adopting and using different resources like reused water without having to think about it in a rational sense 25 times a day, essentially.
Thank you so much. Since we are quite running out of time to our next session, so I believe this is our last questions for the Q&A sessions. So sorry. And with that, we have to come to the conclusions of today's InnovaConnect event. So on behalf of the VinFuture Foundations and Van Lang University, we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to our speakers here, Professor Adrian Mills, Professor Simon Bush, and Dr. Nguyễn Đăng Khoa, for your sharing such insightful presentations today. And we also like to extend our sincere thanks to our audience, both here and online, for your engagement and participation. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.